Ladies and gentlemen, 3 signs God teaches you to rely on Him in your relationships. There is something powerful about relationships, whether they are with family, friends, or even romantic partners, that often reveals the deepest parts of ourselves. At times we may believe we have control over these relationships, but God knows that true peace and fulfillment come when we realize we cannot navigate them on our own. Relationships are not just a part of our lives, they are divine assignments designed to teach us one of the most crucial lessons in life: how to rely on God. Sign number 1, feeling uncertainty about your own strength. There will be times in your relationships when you find yourself uncertain about your ability to handle the challenges before you. You feel exhausted, overwhelmed, and perhaps even defeated. And in that moment of weakness, God is teaching you that you can't rely on your own strength to make it through. You are being called to lean on Him. It's in our weakness that God's strength shines the brightest. When you feel that sense of uncertainty, take a deep breath and know this: God is inviting you into a deeper dependence on Him. It is through recognizing our weaknesses that we discover true strength. His grace is sufficient, and it is in His strength that we find the ability to move forward. Sign number 2, encountering situations you cannot control. Control, what a powerful illusion we hold on to. We think that we can control our circumstances, our relationships, the way people treat us, but life has a way of reminding us that we are not in control. There will be situations, even in your relationships, where you have no say. You cannot change the outcome. You cannot change the other person. And in these moments, God is teaching you to trust Him fully. God is sovereign, and when you face the things you cannot control, He is inviting you to release that burden into His hands. The struggle to control everything and everyone can weigh you down, but surrendering control to God allows His peace to rule your heart. It is in these moments of surrender that you learn how to truly rely on God. Sign number 3, experiencing emotional strain. The emotional strain of a broken heart, disappointment, or even the complexity of human emotions can drive us to seek comfort in all the wrong places. We may turn to people for reassurance, or we may bury our emotions in distractions, but the true answer lies in running to God. When you're emotionally stretched to the limit, and when people have let you down, God is teaching you how to find comfort in Him alone. God is the healer of broken hearts. He understands the depths of your emotional pain, and He is the only one who can truly mend it. It's in those moments of emotional strain that God calls us to turn to Him for solace and healing, not to others, not to distractions, but to His loving presence. When we rely on Him, He restores our hearts and renews our strength. Relationships are divine assignments. God is intentional in bringing people into our lives. Each person you meet is a part of God's plan to help shape you, teach you, and mold you into the person He has called you to be. But don't be mistaken, these relationships are not just about your comfort or happiness, they are about aligning with God's will. As you navigate the complexity of human relationships, remember that God's ultimate purpose is for you to depend on Him. He is the source of all your strength, wisdom, and peace. And it is in your reliance on Him that He reveals His plan for your life through the people He places around you. Don't trust in God in your relationships. When you learn to trust God, something remarkable happens. You find peace, you find stability. And most importantly, you find freedom. Trusting God in relationships means you no longer burden others with the unrealistic expectation of fulfilling your every need. It means letting go of the pressure to control and simply being who God has called you to be in that relationship. When you trust God, He transforms the way you love others. You will love without fear, serve without seeking rewards, and lead without manipulating. Trusting God frees you to be the person He created you to be, and it allows others to be the same. The role of prayer in relationship dynamics. Prayer is the bridge between your relationship with God and your relationship with others. When you pray for the people in your life, you invite God to intervene in your relationships in ways you cannot. Prayer not only changes situations, but it also changes you. When you seek God's wisdom in your relationships, He aligns your heart with His will. Through prayer, God empowers you to love others with the same grace, mercy, and mercy and understanding that He shows you. It is through prayer that you tap into God's divine perspective on your relationships. Embrace God's lessons in your relationships. I urge you today to embrace the lessons God is teaching you in every relationship. Whether you are struggling with uncertainty, control, or emotional pain, know that God is using these moments to deepen your reliance on Him. Let go of the need to do it on your own and surrender your relationships to Him. God wants you to depend on Him, for He is the source of all you need. As you trust Him, you will experience peace, stability, and divine alignment in all your relationships. Allow God to be the center, the foundation, and the strength of your connections. The more you rely on Him, the more you will see His perfect will unfold in your life. Understanding the source of true dependence is one of the most profound revelations we can have in our lives. We live in a world that often teaches us to be independent, to stand on our own, to do it ourselves, and to rely on no one but ourselves. But the truth is, the strength we need for real success, especially in our relationships, does not come from our own ability or from others. It comes from something far greater, something beyond us. It comes from God. Many times we think that independence means strength, that the more we can do on our own, the more powerful we become. But as we navigate the complexities of life, especially in our relationships, we begin to realize that true power doesn't lie in doing things alone. It lies in acknowledging that we are not meant to walk this journey by ourselves. In fact, when we try to carry the weight of relationships on our own, we end up weary and broken. But when we choose to rely on God, something miraculous happens. God designed us to depend on Him in every aspect of our lives. He created us with the need for connection first with Him and then with others. When we are connected to Him, He empowers us to navigate the challenges of life and relationships in ways that our own strength cannot sustain. It is in our surrender to God, in our willingness to lean on Him, that we find the grace, wisdom, and strength we need. True dependence on God doesn't make us weak. Instead, it makes us stronger than we could ever be on our own, because it's God's power working through us, not just our own. In every relationship, whether it's with a partner, a friend, a family member, or even a co-worker, we are called to rely on God. He is the source of our peace when things are unstable, the source of our wisdom when we face uncertainty, and the source of our strength when we are emotionally drained. When we learn to depend on Him, we stop carrying burdens that are too heavy for us. We stop trying to control every situation, and instead we trust God to work in and through our relationships. It is in this place of dependence, where we are humble enough to recognize that we cannot do it all, that God can move powerfully. And when we rely on Him, He transforms the way we interact with others. No longer are we relying on our own understanding, our own plans, or our own methods. Instead, we rely on God's guidance, His wisdom, and His love. This is the foundation of healthy, life-giving relationships, the kind that are built on trust, peace, and grace. True dependence on God is the key to transforming the relationships in your life. It is the source of everything you need to thrive, not just as an individual, but in every connection you have. There are moments in life when we all face the uncomfortable truth that our own strength is not enough. We think we have everything figured out, that we're equipped to handle the challenges ahead, but then life throws us a curveball. Suddenly we find ourselves feeling weak, unsure, and vulnerable. It's in these moments that we must confront a powerful reality. The truth is, we were never meant to carry everything on our own. In relationships, we often carry the weight of expectations, fears, hopes, and even past wounds. We try to navigate through the complexities of human connection, believing that if we just push a little harder or try a little longer, we can overcome any obstacle. But the truth is, sometimes our own strength runs dry. We find ourselves drained, stretched too thin, and wondering how much longer we can keep going. It's in these very moments of uncertainty about our own strength that God is calling us to rely on Him. When we reach the end of ourselves, when we feel like we have nothing left to give, we are at the perfect point to experience God's strength in a way we never could have imagined. God allows us to reach this point not to break us, but to open us up to a deeper level of dependence on Him. There is an incredible power that comes from acknowledging our weaknesses. It's when we admit that we cannot do it all, that we finally open ourselves up to receiving the strength God has been waiting to give us all along. Too often we think that dependence is a sign of weakness, but in reality it's a sign of strength, because it takes strength to admit that we need help, that we cannot do it alone, and that we are willing to trust in something greater than ourselves. In those moments of uncertainty, we have the opportunity to tap into a power that doesn't come from us, but comes from God. His strength is perfect in our weakness. And it is in our surrender, in our willingness to let go of our need for control, that we are able to experience the fullness of His strength. When we feel uncertain about our own abilities, we open the door for God to show us that His power is made perfect in the very places where we thought we were lacking. What if we stopped trying to be everything and just allowed ourselves to rest in the assurance that God has already equipped us for everything He's called us to? What if, instead of looking at our limitations, we looked at God's unlimited power and trusted that He is more than enough for every relationship, every challenge, and every burden we carry? In that moment of uncertainty, we have the chance to turn to God and say, I can't do this alone, but with You I can do all things. The beauty of feeling uncertain about our own strength is that it leads us to a place of divine partnership, where we are no longer carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders, but there are moments in life when we come face to face with situations that completely spin out of our control. We plan, we strategize, we give our best effort, but no matter what we do, things don't turn out the way we expect. Perhaps a relationship falls apart despite your best intentions, or a situation you thought you had handled perfectly slips away from you. It's frustrating, it's confusing, and it often feels like the world is slipping through your fingers. And in those moments, we are forced to confront a harsh reality: we do not control everything. It's easy to feel helpless when we are up against things beyond our influence. In a world that tells us we should always have a plan, always be in control, and always have the answers, these uncontrollable moments can feel like a deep personal failure. But I want to remind you today that this loss of control is not a sign of defeat, it's a divine invitation. These are the very moments when God is teaching us to depend on Him. It's in the chaos, the uncertainty, and the inability to make things work that God calls us to trust Him in a way we never have before. God allows these situations not because He enjoys seeing us struggle, but because He knows that true peace comes from surrendering control to Him. In these moments, we are reminded that no matter how much we plan or prepare, we are never truly in control of the big picture. There is a higher hand, a divine order that is always working things out for us. When you encounter situations that you cannot control, God is drawing you closer to Himself. He is inviting you to stop relying on your own understanding and to trust in His perfect timing and plan. It's easy to get caught up in the pressure to fix everything, to put things back into order, to make sure everything falls into place. But the more you struggle to control, the more you realize you cannot. And it's in that realization that God begins to move. When we are faced with what we cannot control, we are also faced with the opportunity to lean into something greater than ourselves. God's sovereignty is a reminder that even when things don't make sense to us, He is in control. He is always working behind the scenes, orchestrating things in ways we cannot see. When we let go of our desperate need for control and trust in Him, we open the door for miracles to unfold. This is a lesson we can only truly learn when we encounter the situations that seem impossible to handle. God uses the uncontrollable moments of life to strengthen our faith and deepen our trust in His goodness. He wants us to know that even when we don't have the answers, He does. And even when we can't fix the situation, He already has a plan in motion. There's power in releasing control. There's peace in letting go. The situations you cannot control are the very ones where God shows up the most. In your surrender, He will show you His faithfulness. In your inability to manage, He will step in and carry you through. It's in those moments of vulnerability, when you are forced to relinquish control, that you discover strength you never knew you had. Because it is God's strength working through you, not your own. So the next time life throws you into a situation you cannot control, do not be dismayed. Take a deep breath and trust that God is already in the midst of it. He is teaching you how to depend on Him, how to rest in His sovereignty, and how to release your need for control in order to embrace His perfect will. There are times in our lives when the weight of emotions feels almost unbearable. The strain of heartbreak, disappointment, or overwhelming stress can leave us feeling drained, unable to carry the load any longer. It's as if every day brings a new wave of emotion, waves that seem impossible to ride, impossible to calm. In these moments, we can feel so isolated, as if no one truly understands the depth of what we're carrying inside. But in the midst of emotional strain, there is an invitation to discover something greater, something that will sustain us through the hardest times. Emotional strain often comes when we least expect it. It can be triggered by the loss of a loved one, the breakdown of a relationship, or the heavy burden of responsibilities that seem to pile up without mercy. Sometimes it comes from within, from the pressures we put on ourselves, or from the deep internal battles we fight every single day. In these moments, it's easy to feel like we are at the breaking point, like we're about to snap under the weight of our emotions. But here's the truth: even in our most strained, broken, or overwhelmed state, God is right there with us. You see, emotional strain is not something to be ashamed of. It's a part of being human. Every person, no matter how strong they may seem on the outside, has experienced moments of emotional exhaustion. We all face times when our emotions feel too big, too heavy, too consuming. But it's in these very moments that God is teaching us to lean on Him, to find comfort in His presence, and to allow Him to carry what we cannot. The key to navigating emotional strain is to stop pretending we have it all together. So often we try to push through on our own, thinking we should be able to manage everything, our emotions, our relationships, our responsibilities, all by ourselves. But that's not how we were designed to live. God has given us emotions for a reason. They are a reflection of our hearts and minds, and they signal when something needs attention. But when these emotions become too much to handle alone, He is there to help us through. There is a unique strength that comes from being vulnerable in these moments. It takes courage to admit when we're struggling emotionally. It takes even greater courage to turn to God in those times of distress, instead of relying on our own limited strength. And when we do, we find a peace that surpasses all understanding. God doesn't promise to remove all the pain, but He promises to be with us through it. He promises that even when the weight of our emotions feels too much to bear, He is right there holding us, comforting us, and giving us the strength to keep going. Emotional strain can often make us feel like we are alone, but the truth is God is with us in every tear, every moment of frustration, every silent cry. When we allow ourselves to rest in His presence, we find that we are not carrying the burden by ourselves. God meets us in our weakness and gives us the strength to continue forward. His love becomes a balm for our weary hearts, and His wisdom guides us through the storm.